You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Recap me how long your travels back to Australia land took this time.
I mean, this is the longest it's ever taken me to get home. It's been about 58 hours.
Oh my god!
So I got stuck, and there was like the storms in New York. So many people got stuck though. There was like Fab Twitter was ablaze with getting stuck on the East Coast. But then I also got to the West Coast, then missed my connection, so I had to stay overnight, get put up in a hotel, and then had to wait 24 hours for my flight because there was only that flight heading out of San Francisco. If I was in LAX, it would have been way cleaner, but I had to wait a day. So I'm home now. Literally just walked off a plane an hour and a half ago, sat down, and we're going to record a pod about Pro Tour number 1 and Spicy Kano deck.
Spicy Kano deck, indeed. Yeah. Like I was saying to you earlier, I'm excited for it to sound clip episode 56 where someone asked if we're going to play Kano. And I was like, absolutely.
Yeah, pull the rug out and play Kano. Yeah, well, welcome back everyone to Arsenal Pass, episode 58, where we are talking about the Pro Tour New Jersey, the New Jersey weekend that's just been an amazing weekend. Not just the Pro Tour, but the calling, the Players Banquet on Thursday. There was a Battle Hardened event on Sunday, and so many more amazing side events. I mean, a gold legendary, what is the merchant thing
Silver
called? Something
Palms.
Silver Palms was
UPF,
given
yeah.
out at a UPF event. Like, it's just a crazy weekend. I know, I think an Alpha Heart was opened in a box break that James White was a part of, or a case break. So just an amazing, phenomenal weekend. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the Kano deck, the Spice that we ended up playing, and how that came to be, and how each of us came to be on that deck. But first, Brendan, I guess, I mean, this week in Flesh and Blood has been the Pro Tour, so maybe we'll just come back around to them. We'll get straight into the news, yeah?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, Pro Tour New Zealand weekend in the books. Congratulations to our first ever Flesh and Blood Pro Tour champion, Pablo. Pablo, started at 0-2 in the Pro Tour and won the event. Like, that's actually the craziest story. I didn't know that until they were doing the sort of the ceremony for the winners ceremony on the Sunday afternoon. And Flake was hosting the ceremony and saying that Pablo started at 0-2 and then ground out, 11 of the next 12 rounds, winning 11 of the next 12 rounds to make it to top 8 and then taking out the whole Pro Tour. That's just, if you ever think about mentality and what it's like to be in the hole at 0-2, you've got a Pro Tour champion that's done it. So I think even in Magic, like, that's really rare that something like that's ever been done. So
Yeah.
Huge shout out to Pablo. Massive congratulations to all of the top 8, but not just the top 8. I mean, everyone that's competed, everyone that made day 2, everyone that got to the, maybe the top 64, the top 32, top 64 is cash, top 32 is a PTI. Everyone who I guess even just went though, even had the ability to get that invite and to make it to Pro Tour number 1. You're part of history. So congratulations to everyone.
Hayden,
Uprising.
I just want to say, like, I bet there was a non-zero amount of people that went 0-2 and dropped the Pro Tour. Like, I bet there was more than 0 people
maybe.
that did that, which is crazy because Pablo went 0-2 and then ground his way back up the top 8 and actually won the entire tournament. So like you said, just like an absolutely incredible achievement to win the Pro Tour in the first place, but to be sort of in the worst possible position you could be in, like the worst start, and grind it out to that win. Like, it's incredible. Also, Pro Tour champion is from Spain. We talked about on our last podcast what region we thought would be represented. We talked about Europe showing up, and I think they did. We saw a lot of European top 8 and just great performances from players from that region overall.
Europe well and truly showed up. Half of the top 8 at the Pro Tour. We're going to talk about some retrospectives on our predictions, Brendan, when we get into the main topic of the pod and talk about some of that regionality, some of the meta breakdown, and everything, all the goodness from Pro Tour number 1. Rest of the news, a few more items to round it out. We have Uprising World Premieres. So we didn't really talk about this too much last week. We did mention it when it was announced the week prior, shortly before us recording the pod. But these are all happening around the world. 3 World Premieres and Team Blitz callings. These are happening June 10th to 12th, Madrid, Las Vegas, and Sydney. I know you're going to be in Vegas, Brendan. I'm going to be in Sydney. So if you are going to be at those events, look forward to seeing you and hopefully playing against you. World Premiere is going to be an awesome time, playing the first, I guess, the first people in the world to get our hands. It'd actually be us, Brendan, Sydney, time zone wise, we're going to be the first to get our hands on it. So I'll send you some nice juicy snaps of my deck that I play.
Yeah, just give me all the
I'll let-
tips so I can spike that event in Vegas.
Oh yeah, you got to spike the world premiere, obviously. So yeah, if you do want to get along to that, I believe there's still tickets for all of those events. You can get to them if you are locally. I know I've heard getting to Vegas is a bit difficult with flights and accommodation. It's pretty pricey. There's a lot of things going on in Vegas that weekend. If you're in Australia, get down to Sydney. If you're in Europe, maybe you can get to Madrid and partake. ProQuest season is in full swing. So not only did we have the Pro Tour this weekend and the calling in New Jersey, we also had the first weekend of ProQuest season 2. So I think there was about 100 ProQuest, someone was saying, or 80 ProQuest. We had quite a significant chunk of ProQuest this season. I know Chain, Starvo, all doing pretty well through week 1. I'm sure we'll hear more about that as we get into the week and we get some data from LSS. I guess the focus was really on that New Jersey weekend, but we can't lose sight of the ProQuest. People grinding their way, trying to get to France in a few months' time, where we have Pro Tour number 2, which is very exciting. So if you are looking for a ProQuest near you, head up fabtcg.com, look at the event locator. We've got 3 more weeks, is that right? 2 more weeks? 3 more weeks? 3 more weeks, right?
Something around there. I mean, Hayden, I want to know, how do you feel about Starvo being legal throughout this entire ProQuest season? Obviously, it's kind of just how the chips fell, but what is it like? You're going into this meta. We've had Starvo hit Living Legend over the time in which we were at ProQuest New Jersey, but now we have to sort of deal with this guy for the rest of the season. What do you think about the meta? Is it going to feel stale? Do you think people are going to spice it up, or like, what are your thoughts? Obviously, I think some people might be packing a few more null rune than before, but I don't know about this season, right? The meta's going to be kind of weird, eh?
I don't know. I think it's going to take a little bit of an evolution, because that Pro Tour top 8 and even beyond the top 8 into top 32 and 64 was pretty diverse. I know there's some some metagame breakdowns that we're going to get into in terms of not only the top 8, like we said, but even day 2 conversions and what was hanging around at the top tables. I made sure I took a pretty good look at that towards the end of day 2. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be quite interesting. Obviously, we saw a breakout weekend for Kano, which we'll talk about. But Starvo, so Star of the Show put, I think, 3 copies into top 8, right? So I think it's still the most represented deck in top 8, but not significantly. I mean, if you'd said before the event that there's going to be 3 Star of the Show on one chain, you might have been a bit surprised about that top 8, right? So
I think you could have said 2 Kano and surprised a few more people a little bit more. Kano with maybe, I think a 33% conversion to top 8 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, I think the ProQuest season is going to be super interesting, to be honest. I think it looks like Chain and Star of the Show are still the decks to beat, but there's more options out there, which is exciting to see. So, yeah, really interested to see what happens with this ProQuest season. But yeah, just looked it up, 3 weeks to go. So you've got this coming weekend when the pod drops, you've got next weekend, the following weekend, and then we're at the Uprising World Premiere. So, yeah, very, very cool to see. Looking forward to it. Elsewhere on the docket, I guess, in the news as well, Brendan, we've got some giveaways. I know you just posted up on Twitter your giveaway for some extended art heralds. Those are the content creator appreciation kits. These are the foil extended art heralds of rebirth, right?
Yep.
So you're giving those away on Twitter. If you want to win some from Brendan, make sure you hit up Brendan's Twitter. I have some to give away as well. Not sure how I'm going to give these out. I might do something at the calling in Sydney, plus maybe something on Twitter. Just leave it with me, but we will have some to give out to people. And we both, right? You also have a Calling Fable package to give away this week as well, which we need to give to someone. That includes calling entry for the upcoming Calling Uprising World Premiere entry as well, plus all the goodies. The sleeves, the 2 different promo cards. You get everything in this Fable package. So keep an eye out on, I guess, Twitter. I think I'm going to give mine away on Twitter. Easiest way to do it. So if you do want to get in and get that, I think it's worth $150, $200 depending on where you are in the world. Get that Fable package. Then check out Twitter.
Yeah, I'll definitely be doing the same. Twitter's sort of my go-to for that kind of stuff. I mean, so yeah, hey, just closing out the news here. I just want to give a big shout out to the Arsenal Pass Patreon. This past month we were pretty busy preparing for Pro 2 New Jersey, and Hayden and I, obviously, as sort of the demand to prepare for tournaments like this, our work life also spikes at the same time. Wouldn't have it any other way, but I'm very busy. But coming out of the PT, we're gonna have a lot of content for the ProQuest season, as well as Uprising when it comes out. Hayden and I, Limited is our bread and butter, so very excited to see what kind of value we can provide there. In addition, we do have a Kano deck tech going up hopefully by the end of this weekend. Just kind of waiting for Sasha to finally make it home because he will be joining us. We're going to do a deck tech on YouTube, but in addition, we'll throw up a very detailed guide on a lot of like the nuance, math, and just more complicated lines on Patreon. So whether you're a patron now or it's something you might be interested in, that should be up by next week. So definitely check it out if you're looking to throw some spells.
Yeah, well, we're going to give a little bit of a tease of that now. I think by the time this pod drops tomorrow, we're recording the day before, a little bit later than usual. The pod will drop, and then we're hoping to get the video out. It's probably going to be in the weekend now at the stage, just by the time, as Brendan says, that obviously I was delayed back. We're going to get Sasha back, and then we're going to record that, and then we're going to get edited and up. But we're going to try and do that, hopefully, if not before Saturday, then on Saturday. So if you do want to run it in for a Pro Quest, there's some information there at a top level. And then, yeah, the stick is very deep. We're going to talk a little bit about, the deck and I guess why we felt this was such a strong option for the weekend and why it did so well as we get into it. No Commander Cookout this week, Brendan, because we do have some questions about the Pro Tour, which I'm going to tack on to, I guess, our recap. We can't go past talking about Pro Tour number 1, so we do have a number of questions from Twitter and some from our Arsenal Pass Discord as well about the event. People want to know things about, the Pro Tour, about the deck, about testing, about everything leading up to it. So we'll get into some of those questions later on. But for now, Brendan, I think it's time to dive straight into part 1 of the main topic, which is it's one for the history books. It's taking a look back at Pro Tour New Jersey.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
All right. So, the last time people would have heard our voices was the Thursday. Honestly, my head is so scrambled with time zones and where we are. It's currently Thursday for me. It's Wednesday for you, right? So about 6 days ago was the last time everyone heard from us. We were recording the pod on Thursday morning Thursday afternoon before the Players Banquet at Pro Tour New Jersey. We were sitting in our Airbnb in New Jersey, and we talked about where we were at with testing at the time. So it was actually in the morning, wasn't it? So I was pretty close to audible to Kano at that point. There's a bit more convincing that afternoon, and then I changed over at that point. And then as well, we were kind of just getting ready, last minute preparations, looking forward to the Players Banquet. Then Brendan, that afternoon, we got to spend the morning with Fabled Academy.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for what Alex is doing at Fabled Academy. If you, as I said last week, if you're not familiar with what Alex is doing at Fabled Academy, go and check out Fabled Academy on Twitter and YouTube. He was basically the unofficial documentor of the weekend. Like the footage he caught, even to the point that I think by Sunday, LSS were like LSS and Channel Fireball were like working with him to make sure they could get the best possible sort of behind the scenes footage, right, of the top 8. They even did like a big walkout thing that Alex helped film. And I mean, I have seen some of the footage, like he was showing us a bit of it, right? And he even put a few clips up on Twitter. Like his production quality is so high, and the effort he's putting in to document basically everything you're not seeing on the feature match tables at the Pro Tour is what Alex is working on. He's got narratives with teams and groups of players. He's got, he's got interviews with certain players, with people from LSS, people from Channel Fireball, the commentary team, all these things behind the scenes. You're going to get a real taste of what it was like to be at Pro Tour New Jersey and the Calling New Jersey, and what was happening through these minds of some of these players and teams without even being there, which is going to be super exciting.
Yeah, it's just he's on a different level, right? I think some of the most important work that is being done in Flesh and Blood and has been done up until now, right? Taking it to the next level, weaving the narratives of the players, of the teams, of the regions. Like, this is exactly what we need in terms to like get this game to sort of a better spectator position, right? Where people can empathize with players, can empathize with these teams, like the Germans or Arsenal Pass or the Wolf Pack, as I like to say. I wanted to do a little, because we're about to talk about Thursday too, which is the banquet, but there's a little anecdote from that as well I want to talk about, because it's one of my favorite things ever, and it's going to come out in this video. And that's that we're at the banquet, and Alex has weaved this sort of narrative of like the German team and like Arsenal Pass kind of having like a beef, right? Like a little face off, a bit of a fun rivalry. And so we have to do this like walk up where like both the German team and us walk up walk up together, and then we meet each other and we talk a little trash, so and so on. And we're mic'd up, and he films it, and we walk up, and like Christian Hawk and all the boys are there, and we're talking. And I was like, yeah, Christian, so what are you playing? He's like, Starvo. I was like, what are you playing? I was like, Kano. And he's like, oh, ha ha ha. And I was like, ah, ha ha ha. And he was like laughing off. I remember the next day he was sitting across from me, and I'm like, look, Christian, look up. And he's like, I thought you were trolling me. It's just a funny, like the laughter, like back and forth, as he's just like the most ridiculous answer ever, of course. But God, that video is going to be incredible. I mean, Alex has put so much effort and just passion into what he does, and you can just see it through the results.
So passionate about it, and he's really clear about his vision. I know it's he's worked with video and I guess productions and things in the past, but this is like, he's putting so much effort into this, and I think he's consistently learning as well. And I think people are going to be blown away by this. And to be honest, if he's not being contracted by Legend Story Studios or Channel 5 before the next Pro Tour, we'll do it ourselves. I can't see it not happening though, to be honest. I think already by Sunday, I know he was already working with them a little bit to make sure that you got the best possible footage for Fabled Academy. And so that's going to be, I can't wait for it, to be honest. I've got to send him the sound file today because he's doing something quite cool with our intro, but I don't want to ruin it. But looking forward to seeing what that looks like and how the beef comes across. Literally no beef. I mean, we had great chats with the German team. It was our first time. I think for me, it was probably the same for you, Brennan.
Yeah.
All of them. We talked throughout the weekend as well.
It was like before we met them, we were filming with Fabled Academy like the day before, and he was like, "Oh yeah, so I'm gonna like weave this narrative with like you and the German team." He's like, "Why don't you guys like talk some shit?" And of course, like he puts us on, and like
you jump straight to it.
I know, yeah. So I just like I don't know, I kind of just talked out of my butt or whatever. And I think
that's unusual.
Yeah, I think it came off pretty funny. But I remember Hayden was standing next to me, and he was like, when we started talking, and like whatever was coming out of my mouth at the time, Hayden was just appalled. He was like so surprised, like, what the fuck?
But no, it was awesome. So as I say, Thursday, we all, I think Luke was the last of our sort of, we had an Airbnb. There was me, Brendan, Sasha, who has also been part of our testing group. And then Luke was staying with us, who's a good friend of Sasha's. Ira, Premier World Champion, the first World Champion we ever had in the game of Flesh and Blood. Luke Badger was staying with us as well. Luke played Dash in the main event. He arrived, and then we all rocked over to the banquet, which was, I honestly didn't know what to expect, Brendan. So just to set the scene, because I know there was some pictures and stuff, but people who weren't at the weekend may not know what was happening. But effectively, we rocked up. It was the venue. The venue looked completely different the next day. It was like, kind of looked like there was like mood lighting and stuff on. There was like this full catering spread. Way more than I thought it was just gonna be some like sort of hors d'oeuvres or like small picking food, but there was like a full like sort of catering center, and you go around and you get your meals, and there was multiple different sort of things around, and then there were like tables all set up for people to standing tables or seating tables, and basically the first kind of hour and a bit was just like mixing and mingling. James White was doing photo ops over in the corner, so you could line up and get your photo with him and have a chat to him, which I know I definitely did. Not sure if you got the opportunity to, Brendan.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. And then just meeting everyone and seeing everyone, either those that we've met at past events, past callings, or those that we hadn't met before, people we hadn't had the opportunity to, like the Germans, like the Polish team. I met multiple players from Sweden. Shout out to those guys. They had a pretty good weekend as well. So yeah, just an amazing time at this banquet. It was an interesting thing because it's like everyone's there the day before the Pro Tour, and it's a good way to settle nerves, I think, and kind of break the ice about, this is historic. This is a historic moment. All of these players have qualified and made this journey, and everyone gets to interact. But then also on the flip side of it, I felt like people didn't really want to talk about Flesh and Blood because people don't want to talk about you don't want to be disingenuous, right? And like not talk about the decks you're playing or whatever. So people try to like almost kind of avoid talking about Flesh and Blood, which is quite interesting. And I kind of like that, to be honest. I like that a lot of my conversations weren't necessarily about, well, they definitely weren't about the format. They were more so maybe about, getting better at the game and those sorts of things. So it was quite interesting. Except,
I was telling everybody exactly what we were doing and exactly what we were playing. And the thing was just nobody believed me because it was the Thursday the night before. So everybody thought I was trolling. I was like, yeah, playing Kano. Just obviously the best deck. It's like he was like, oh yeah, okay.
I actually had a few people ask me that. People would ask me, they're like, have you decided? Because I've been pretty public about my sort of struggles with picking a deck for this format and picking a deck for this PT and not feeling good about preparation. And I'm going to talk a bit about that because in the end, I had a really good weekend from a placing standpoint. But had a few people asking me, and I think literally just before we got to the banquet, I started sleeving up Kano, right, Brendan? And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm on it. Let's go to the banquet, and then let's get back, and I need to learn like the math and learn the key plays for this deck. So people ask me, I said, yeah, I think I've locked the deck. Maybe not what people expect. That's kind of all I said. So didn't want to give away too much at that point. But yeah, that was kind of, it's pretty hard to give away playing Kano. I think people just pack that Null in and you're kind of done. You're kind of toast, so to speak. So,
not on our deck though, I don't think. Which
we'll
dig into.
Help.
Yeah, well, it definitely doesn't help. Yeah, I mean, Hayden switched to Kano. I mean, he's going to tell you a lot of things about, I wasn't very comfortable or like whatever. A lot of these Haydenisms. This man walked in, I think whenever you flew in, I think it was like Wednesday or something. And he was like, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm like, okay, bro. I was like, this deck, it's the truth. He watched me play, I think 2 games and he was like, yeah, I'm not playing Dash or like whatever other deck he had maybe considered. He was just like, this deck is disgusting. I don't understand. Like the math here is like ridiculous. Like this is disgusting. And we were immediately kind of just like, and Kano for us is also, I think it's just like a spiritual decision. Like you can't be presented.
That's actually the big part of it.
Yeah, you cannot be, and that was actually a big issue. I think in like when Sasha and I were like, "Hey, we're gonna play Kano." Is that I'd had a conversation with Hayden about a week before, and we were really on the cusp of either Chain or Kano, and I was like, "Dude, I'm too excited to play Kano that I may just be sort of biased and blinded to the results, right? Like I'm probably just gonna play Kano no matter what because it's awesome. Because like literally, I think it's like part of my religion that if Kano is possible to play at a pro tour, that I'm going to play it. It's too cool. If it's even remotely close to a tier 1 deck, and I thought it was actually like a tier 0 deck in this format, I'm on it, right? Like nothing's going to take me off that deck.
Yeah. I mean, really interesting because we're going to talk more about sort of how Kano came to be, I guess, in terms of our testing group, but just a bit of a spoiler, like Kano is something that we've been looking at way back when the kind of with those bans hadn't been named, that ban restrict announcement kind of got kicked down the road. And Kano was a deck that, I know yourself and some of the wider team are looking at as a way to target like Viserai.
Yep.
And that was being tested. But myself, I wasn't like super impressed with it, revisiting it. I know kind of some others in the team felt kind of the same. So I was pretty aligned with more of some of the other people in our team along like looking at Chain or in our testing group. I had a Chain list that was pretty similar to Michael Hamilton's, or Michael Hamilton showed me his list and I agreed with a lot of decisions and basically copied it, because he gave me access to that, and I still wasn't that solved on, I guess, that sort of set on Kano. But yeah, anyway, that was kind of the Thursday. Things changed for me. Got shown the truth, and then I guess we go to the banquet. Banquet was amazing, like I say, and then got back, worked on some of the math. I stayed up till like 2 a.m. just goldfishing the deck because I actually felt like for me I was prioritizing being comfortable on my lines more than like a good sleep. I still had a pretty reasonable sleep. I still got like 5.5 hours or 6 hours, which is like not terrible, but I just needed that confidence. Otherwise, I wasn't going to sleep anyway. So that's kind of the decision I made. I think you immediately hit the hay basically after we got back, right? Not long after we sleeved up and
yeah. I was comfortable. At that point. Like. There's also something important to talk about here. It's like you said, we sort of first ideated this deck to target Viserai, and like at that time it was actually kind of bad against Starvo, and it was like, wow, if Chain comes in with his Spell Void or like it's just kind of potentially faster, it's just not good for us. But back then, while we had sort of the fun, like the ideology of the deck, which was around Aether Wildfire, like this combo oriented deck, the deck back then sucked compared to what it became, right? So I think we didn't make the most significant changes, or at least some of the bigger ones that actually pushed us really over that edge until about 5 days before the tournament or something like that. So I think it was like very fair to sort of be like, this doesn't look so good. Like it looked a bit flippy in testing back in that older meta. And even when we kind of brought it back up as like maybe like a final audible. So yeah, didn't really lock in the deck till about a few days before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like this is the thing. It's like Chain was on the table for I think everyone on the team. I think most of the team have been like, yeah, I'm just going to play Chain. It's just the best thing we can do in this format. But then I guess there was a wizard hanging around on the edges. So Saturday, Friday even, day one of the Pro Tour. We get in, and Brendan, you're on camera immediately round one. I thought we could just talk through Friday, just give kind of an overview of how the day went for us. I know it was a bit of a contrast, so I don't know if you just want to go sort of round by round and talk as much as we want, and then
Yeah, I'll probably keep it high level just because we got a lot of days to get through. But so like round one, so there's a joke kind of between Sasha, Hayden, and I that three of us are playing Kano, and we were said that one Kano would have to die for the sins of the others to be playing Kano at the Pro Tour. And I think unfortunately that was me this time. So round one, I end up losing to Aggro Dash, which is not our best matchup, but definitely beatable. But it's just a little bit higher variance because I think you have to find the combo pretty quick. There's not a lot of wiggle room there. But after that, I actually pair into 4 prisms. Not in a row, but it's not ideal. So that's kind of how my day one went. Ended up rolling into a lot of prisms. Did get, ended at 3 and 4. So I didn't make day 2, unfortunately. Did play the calling. But yeah, our deck was very teched to be in the winner's meta, right? There's this concept of the winner's meta and the loser's meta. It's like you lose those early rounds, like round 1, round 2. You might be playing with some prisms who were, for the most part, on the lower tables, versus, Hayden and Sasha, who were largely playing against like Chain and Starvo and the decks that we were really tech to beat. So yeah, my day one didn't go as well as I hoped, but I was very happy with, Hayden and Sasha's results going into, at the end of that day.
Yeah, I mean, I actually played against your Prism. I had a round 1 Prism, so not the best start. I was rethinking my life decisions after pairing into Prism round 1 and starting at 0-1 in the Pro Tour. Not how I had envisioned it, but I also still felt really good about things. I mean, my expectations were kind of out the window, to be honest. We're just heading into the Pro Tour just based on preparation. I just wanted to enjoy the weekend as much as possible and just play the best I could play and leave everything else just kind of out there. And that's ultimately what I feel like I did. There's only one match that I go back and I'm, I still think about, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, 2 Prisms, played one round 1, then beat one a bit later on in the day. Very close. That matchup is obviously very tough. I then lose to a third one on camera in day 3 and day 2. I play into, like you say, that kind of like, the idea of the winner's meta, which there did end up being more Prisms than most people would have thought, and definitely more than you would have thought, Brendan. I never doubted Prism. I've said that on the podcast for the last few weeks. I thought Prism would still show up and still be a reasonable choice, and it ultimately did fairly well. Put a lot of people into top 32 and obviously a player into top 8. So but then I played, I think, 3 Starvos and 2 Chain were my other 5 matches of day 1. So pretty good split, about what we expected. I ended up losing round 1, but then winning the next 5 in a row, and then coming to the last round of day 1 to finish 6-1 if I can win it. Feeling pretty good. Ultimately, I misaligned just through inexperience with the deck with a Ragamuffin Sonic Boom play. I thought I had the lethal damage. I think just a little bit tired, a little bit inexperienced, not knowing the math maybe as well as I should, and kind of pumped that one, which is not not a great feeling to end day 1. But I think that's kind of the only feel bad I had of the weekend of like I felt like I let myself and the deck down. But yeah, Saturday, I guess day 1 Friday felt pretty good heading in. I think Sasha was X1, I was 5-2, and obviously unfortunately for Brendan, a trip to the calling table.
Yeah, and at that point, like I felt like I had really come to New Jersey to play the Pro Tour. I didn't come to play the calling.
Yeah.
So I had a few choices going into Saturday, which was like I could play Kano, which is not like it's just not really a great choice because, and we'll talk about Saturday because it's freaking hilarious the stuff that I faced on Saturday. But yeah, I mean Kano after it's had like a breakout day on day 1 because not only were we doing really well with it, or at least our team, but also Alexander Vor was at the top tables. People were going to overtech for Kano, like disgustingly overtech for Kano, despite how much might be represented in the calling. So I could have played Chain in that, but I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to play Kano and teach people that Null Rune can't save them. And like that was sort of my goal, was just to embarrass people that had brought overtech with Null Rune, because against our deck in particular, like Null Rune doesn't help, like Hayden said, but we're not really exploiting low Null Rune. It's great, right? It makes things easier, but it's definitely not sort of a sort of prerequisite for the deck to be functional.
No, it does make some games an absolute joke though. I know
Yeah.
Sasha on day, I think round 1 of day 2, Sasha's opponent is playing Chain on the play. I think they're like AB0 or AB1.
Yeah.
They go Soul Shackle, Bounding Demigod, and Sasha goes, in response to that Bounding Demigod before it's an attacking card, kill you.
Yep. I did that
Sasha
to a Briar player in the calling. literally turn 0. He goes first. You're dead.
I did not get the opportunity to do that, but I know you did. I know Sasha dealt an 86 damage game like in one turn as well. So
Yep.
the deck does some ridiculous things. Mine were a little bit more grindy, but that's okay. I also was less experienced and maybe missed some of those lines, so it just kind of shows the power of the deck. But yeah, like you say, 7 Kanos in total, 4 make day 2, 2 in the top 8, 3 in the top 16. Like that is, Kano had by far the best conversion. Like it's not even, can't even touch that. That's crazy. So yeah, we play day 1. We get back to the Airbnb. It's starting to get quite late. We want to have a nice dinner. I know, Brendan, you went like feeling like the best. You want to chill out, like just regroup.
You can just tell them what I did. I literally was like, you know what, guys? You guys go do your dinner. I'm gonna go take a bath. I'm gonna go treat myself. Yeah, just chill out, take a nice bath, like regroup for this beatdown I'm about to put on these AB3 Guardians the next day.
So myself, Sasha, and Luke went for a little date. We went to this beautiful restaurant on the pier down in New Jersey, not far from, I guess we were staying, so West New York. Had a great dinner, the best dinner I had, I think, while I was in New Jersey. And then enjoyed and sort of decompressed and talked about how we were going to win the Pro Tour. And then came back and went to bed and then got up for Saturday. So I guess I'll give a little bit of a recap on Saturday. For myself and Sasha, we both end up I sort of win my first few rounds. Sasha, I think, goes 1-1 his first few rounds. We quickly end up in the X2 bracket together. And then I get a game on camera against Prism, against Mike, who people might know Mike. He's from Canada. Awesome dude. Just didn't, it's a tough matchup. I actually had an opportunity to win, but I actually like brick double red on my hand the turn that I need to kill him, and then also Ragamuffins red. So just couldn't quite get there. Ends up being not my game, which is all good. So X3 still live though, and then Sasha is X3 as well. And then we both end up having win-ins in the last round, which is just enormous. Both playing at Star. We're actually sat next to each other, which is hilarious.
Next to Michael too. All three of you were literally just next to each
Michael.
other.
Yeah, it was like me, Sasha, Michael in a row. Unfortunately, I don't think Michael's was a win-in, and I think he'd lost the round prior. But both me and Sasha have the win-ins, and I just get dismantled. To be honest, my opponent plays 3 Starvode fused Oakenolds in the first 4 turns, and I actually have an out. Like if I hit the Lessons in Lava in my last hand, if I draw into it, I'm okay. But just doesn't happen, and I can't dig and get there. So missed top 8, end up 14th, which is good enough for a PTI and some cash. So definitely not upset given the weekend coming in. Like I said, expectations were kind of out the window. Didn't know what I was going to play. Ended up on the deck, and it was amazing. It was so powerful, and I'm so glad I got to play Kano with the PT. Like that's just I can't believe that.
Right? Talked about that. We talked about this for years. I think was like PT number 1. And play Kano, right? Kano's like, it's so funny because Kano's seen as one of the most unplayable classes and characters in Flesh and Blood. And it was like, God, you just get to go to PT1 and just have that breakout performance. Like, I think
Francis Azalea.
Yeah, there you go. Francis Azalea. Maybe. I doubt it. I don't know. It's going to be hard to sort of top that one, I think. I think Sasha and I, when we went to the first constructed calling, we had sort of like a similar kind of situation where we took the like premier aggro deck and flipped it to like a control deck. But yeah, I don't think we're ever going to top Kano at PT1. I think that's the peak there.
Yeah, pretty tough. So yeah, Sasha ends up making it to top 8. I just want to like briefly touch on, because I know some people had mentioned it to me and said in comments, I had a couple of messages about the last round of the PT. Sasha's opponent was DQ'd from the event. Not going to talk too much about it. I think, generally when people get DQ'd in an event, LSS will add a statement to like the recap of the event. I don't really know. I don't think it was ever intentional from Sasha's opponent what happened. But just unfortunately, I guess the result of that is a disqualification for his opponent, which is not the place you want to be in the last round of the Pro Tour. So I don't really have much more to say, I guess, Brendan, because I just don't know the ins and outs of exactly how that happened. We didn't talk about it too much with Sasha, and obviously Sasha wasn't privy to the conversation that happened with the judges and his opponent. But
yeah, I mean, we all know that I think the same amount of details. Like basically, there's like a sleeve issue. Then it's deck checked, and like I think that his opponent just kind of got a little bit unlucky on like whatever thing was actually, marked. I don't think it was intentional. I don't think any of us do like think that there's like a sort of malicious intent or anything like that. It's just really unfortunate. That's what happened. I actually feel very bad for him having to go through that. But yeah, I mean, that's really all there is to the situation. I literally think there's nothing else.
Yep. So end of the day though, Sasha is in top 8. As I say, I finished 14th. Michael, who opted to, was with the chain deck that I was looking to play something very similar up until probably about 24 hours before, finishes in I think 17th, so just misses the top 16, but still grabs another PTI in the top 32. And we're set for an awesome Sunday with 2 Kanos in the top 8. So the top 8 breakdown ends up being 3 Starvos, 2 Kano, second most represented in the top 8, a Prism, a Chain, and a Briar makes out the top 8.
Mm-hmm. So let me tell you all what it's going to be like to play Kano in the ProQuest season. So I get to the calling. This is the calling, by the way. This isn't what your ProQuests are going to look like. They're going to be even worse. But first round, Starvo, AB3. Second round, Starvo, AB2. And this is AB2 plus Crown. Like, these are really grindy matchups. Like, these people way over tech for Kano, because even if you look at the calling, like, minuscule amount of Kanos, not to mention the amount of people that could actually pilot that deck. Not that it's really hard. It's just I don't think that's something that you sleeve up and just you can immediately like it just kind of works. Like there's a process of learning there. And then pretty much all my opponents had like 2 AB plus. Like the Rune Blades, obviously it's a joke if they have AB because they just don't have the resources to do anything with it anyway. But yeah, I had like some very grindy Guardian matchups, like 30, 40 minutes. Like not the point of deck stacking, but to the point where Toma Fjendal was like the best card in my deck because it was letting me gain life and extend the game out. But yeah, I beat almost all of the opponents that had more Arcane Barrier than they should have, because the deck is it doesn't prey on Arcane Barrier. It preys on like windows, and that's almost irrespective of the amount of Arcane Barrier. The less there is, the easier it is, but you can still sort of tempo their arsenal and then ultimately combo them because you apply pressure on both sides of the turn. Like, Kano always has the option to play at one point in the game, guaranteed via Stormstriders on both sides of the turn cycle, right? And that's usually kind of the kill turn. But yeah. I mean, some really grindy matchups, and just showing people they're not safe. You can pack it all; it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the good thing you just there is like the way to look at it is like when you have these high AB decks, you have less window creations. So there's less time frames, but there's still windows, and it's not about necessarily what the AB does in terms of being able to stop everything. It's about shutting down windows. And when people have lower AB, you just get these wider windows. So I think that's literally what it is. But yeah, so I know for yourself, you end up just missing day 2, I think, of the calling.
Yeah, I went 4-3, but honestly, I had literally no interest in playing that Sunday. Like, I wanted that Sunday off, which is weird because I will literally travel across the United States or even probably travel to Europe to play a calling. But I went to New Jersey to play a Pro Tour, not to play a calling. And I think picking Kano for the calling was a pick for fun, right? When you know people are going to overtech, they're going to really try to exploit you, whatever it is. So I had a great time. Like, I had a lot of fun, and I was really happy going, post calling, having my friend Sasha make it into the top 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we head back on Saturday evening. We start testing the matchups. We test Sasha's quarterfinal matchup. He's playing a Starvo with AB1 plus Crown. Kind of know this matchup pretty well, but we just test their specific list, and I kind of come to the conclusion that they just kind of have to high roll. They just have to do basically what my opponent did to me. So it's the exact same list. I played a teammate of Isaac Krutz, who Isaac is going to be Sasha's opponent in the quarterfinals. Isaac is going first. That's the advantage they have. That's pretty important. But basically, I guess the conclusion we come to is like it's pretty favored for Kano. But yeah, if you get those Oakenhold turns, you get those dominated turns, and then you maybe whiff on some of your draws, Starvo can win pretty handily. So that's the conclusion we come to, and then we start to think about what next. What if Sasha gets past this? Then we're looking at the Prism matchup, maybe the Briar matchup, and a Kano mirror. Me and Brendan start thinking about like, all right, how would we approach this Kano mirror? We even played a few games before we no longer needed to do that after Alex got binned out by the Briar, in the quarterfinals. But yeah, ultimately what ends up happening is exactly what we said. The way that Starvo has to win is what happens to Sasha. Gets pretty rolled pretty quickly. A lot of dominate attacks come in. If you go and watch that match though, it looks like it's over for Sasha so quickly, but it's not. Sasha can actually win on the final turn, but he bricks. He's one resource short of being able to kill Isaac. It doesn't hit the blue, and unfortunately just can't quite get it done. But it's so close. Literally just one resource between him and the next stage of the top 8.
This is how it goes, right? We tested a lot. Like, we tested a lot that night and during the day while the top 8 was being played on Sunday. And
yeah, I mean, you were just jamming games, right?
Yeah.
Sasha had a little nap, and you just jamming games.
Yeah,
Then he played some, and
yeah, we put all of our effort into like anything but the Starvo matchup because we played it a million times. Like the Starvo matchup is like a very consistent matchup for the Kano deck. Like it's definitely it's got to be either 90-10 or approaching higher than that. Like it's pretty miserable to be on the Starvo side of that. That being said, like yes, you can absolutely win. Like when you have a character,
the show.
Yeah, exactly. When you have a hero like Starvo, like there's no deck that will always beat that deck, right? Like it can win. The ability is powerful enough, and also Kano, while we run 36 blues, like you can still brick, of course. And that's ultimately what happened to Sasha, which is funny because like as soon as Alexander lost, because this is the anecdote too, this Alex's deck looks a lot better than Sasha's in the mirror, like infinitely better. And we actually might have considered just fatiguing him because like his deck list was significantly better in the mirror from what it looked like, and we had much more blues than he had access to. We almost packed one Timekeeper's Whim in the deck list, which we probably would have fatigued him in that case. But since we didn't, we were testing a lot of the Wizard Mirror, and I think that was actually really interesting because we had a lot of these ideas about the Wizard Mirror, like Stir Forked is really good, Wildfire is unplayable, etc., etc. And that stuff actually ended up being pretty wrong. Wildfire is just broken in the mirror still because like, let's say you wildfire them on their turn. They've already extended some amount of resources into you. What are they going to do? Like boots with their action point and play another thing? It's not going to kill you, right? If you're hitting them with 3 spells plus the wildfire being one of them, they're dead. So yeah, it was funny. It was kind of cool to like learn that matchup and prepare and like come to these conclusions as we were kind of preparing for what we thought would be the finals.
Yeah, unfortunately, ultimately, it doesn't end up mattering. And then, of course, Isaac moves on. I think Isaac then plays against the Chain player, right, which is Pablo, and Pablo wins that, and then Pablo goes on to win the Pro Tour. So congratulations to Isaac, to Pablo, to everyone in that top 8. Just really cool to watch. They play one by one. You can go and watch the coverage if you haven't already. And I was sneaking over to watch in between us sort of playing games and stuff. And then, you know, we're at the Pro Tour Sunday. We're having fun. We're hanging out with everyone. We're just having like the gases time, right? Like it's just awesome hanging out with everyone. We end up doing some team drafts, Brendan. Now, I'm going to throw over to you to tell us about the team drafts. Because this was your idea. You were captain. You were organizing these team drafts.
Captain.
So who did we team?
Yeah, I think I'm more like daddy, right? Because nobody else will freaking do it. Like nobody can get anybody organized, so I gotta go try to find everybody, get them together, get the box, do whatever. But the reason why Hayden is throwing this over to me is because, you know, I didn't really have the best record in team.
You
draft.
might be off the team. That's why
I didn't. Watch your mouth, son. I didn't have the best record in team draft, but I was great support, good cheerleader. Et cetera, et cetera. And I think that a lot of Hayden's success in the team draft was fueled by just, you know, me pumping them up. But yeah, we play against the Wolf Pack. We lose 3-4, and then
that one hurts.
Doesn't feel good. But you know, look at the games on camera, scoreboard. You know what it is. And then we played against the Brits, and we got dumpstered in Monarch draft, unfortunately. Particularly, I went 0-3.
I was gonna say, I won my first 2 rounds.
All right, Hayden. Hayden won his first 2 rounds, but yeah, went 0-3, played a chain deck, just wasn't very good. But end of the day, it was just like team drafts are fun, right? So we had a lot of fun, played multiple formats, and I think it's really cool being able to play like these, you know, these groups of players, right? So whether it's the Wolf Pack, or it's the Brits or the Germans or whoever, it's just cool to sort of have that like 3v3, like team v team aspect. So I had a good time, and Sasha actually played some of them with us because he got binned off so early.
Yeah, he finished his top 8 match, and he only played literally like 3 games. You know, 1 game of actual Flesh and Blood on camera, and then a couple of games prior for sort of some warm up, and that was it. So yeah, he jumped in for the second draft, which unfortunately we still lost. So we're gonna have to regroup on that, Brendan, and get better. But team drafts, honestly, encourage people to play team drafts at events, at Pro Tours. I think the sets with 4 heroes works way better because there's like tension between like who drafts what heroes. When you have 3 heroes, you can easily end up with like 3-3, and it's not as exciting and as strategic. I don't think the 4 heroes is a lot tougher to have with the 6 players. So yeah, I think hopefully that becomes a culture at Sundays for Pro Tours, when people are
Yeah,
playing in top 8
people
or
are looking for
just
it,
other.
right? Yeah, people are
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
to
yeah.
team draft. So like I think it's already a thing, but like come like some future callings or like even the next Pro Tour or whatever it is, I think it's gonna be very popular. So I'm
Yep,
excited.
hopefully. Yeah, I mean, there was a Battle Hardened on the Sunday as well. I found out it was 10 rounds, and I decided to not play that. And instead, obviously help Sasha get ready and then do some team drafts. So, no, Sunday, great. And then we went out for some dinner. It took us about an hour to get into the city, but we went out to Los Tacos in the city. Had to obviously do that, Institution in New York. And then we went to a couple of bars with Zach and the Team Covenant guys with the Wolfpack. They gave us the beatdown, and they gave us a pity invite to dinner and some drinks, right, Brennan?
Yeah.
No,
I
no,
think
no, just catching up, and what does Zach say? Rivals on the court, friends off the court.
something like that. Something like that. I'm actually going to be playing on the Team Covenant channel next week on Tuesday with Steven because Zach's actually going on vacation. So Steven and I are going to play some Blitz. I'm going to convince him to join Sasha and I, or Hayden and I maybe in Vegas. Now Hayden said maybe he's going to be playing in Sydney, but Hayden and I for the Team Blitz event in Vegas so that Steven can finally make the move over to his the true home team, his spiritual brothers in arms, and we can dunk on the Wolfpack in Vegas. But overall, I love those guys. They're just awesome. They've been friends for a long time now, so it's great to always hang out with them at these events.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I mean, all in all, an amazing weekend, and it's sad it's over. To be honest, sad it's over. But we've got another Pro Tour coming up in France, not too far away. We've got the Calling in Vegas, Madrid, Sydney, wherever you're going to be. Can't wait for that. Looking forward to having an awesome time in Sydney. I will be in Sydney, Brennan. Sorry, I'm not coming to Vegas. I will be in Sydney. Me and the team that we've organised for that already starting to think about Blitz and what we might play. So we'll start to have a look at this week after a bit of a decompression post Pro Tour. But Brendan, want to circle back onto the Kano deck. Had a lot of questions. A lot of people asked about the deck over the weekend. Plus, we had a lot of questions on Twitter and stuff. So first of all, I'm gonna let you do the talking here. I'm gonna ask you some questions and let you fire off. But first of all, why decide to play Kano? I know you've already talked about this a bit, so you can be pretty, I guess, succinct about this and just kind of wrap it up if you like.
Yeah, so why I decided to play Kano, right? Well, he was viable, so we saw pretty early that the combo deck. Okay. We need to back it all the way up to like this is not a Kano deck, right? Like yes, we're playing Kano, and yes, it looks like we're doing Kano things, but it's very different from what the traditional way that Kano is operated. It's absolutely a combo deck. It wins with Wildfire almost every single game, and it does it in a consistent manner, right? And it's by playing Wildfire on your opponent's turn, then banishing from Kano's ability. You can hit almost any card in your entire deck. You just need to hit a blue 1-drop, and then you Ragamuffins the Blazing on top. Obviously, you can do this backwards as well. You can Ragamuffins the Aether Wildfire on top, and then Kano in response, and just basically do the same line, right? And that's what we did every single game because the base damage on a double pump, and double pump means Crucible of Aetherwind plus Metacarpus Nodes is 32, and then it goes 25, 22 as you don't have a resource for each. So ultimately, that's what we're playing. We're not playing Kano, we're not playing Reverberate or just trying to spike people in low AB or anything like that. So ultimately, we're just playing a combo.
Basic game plan, yeah.
Yeah, so why is that? Why decide to play that? Why is that good? Well, into decks like Starvo and Chain, obviously they weren't packed for AB. Starvo's got a lot to worry about, especially in the form of Prism. We'll be kind of teching for that, and then Chain at the same time has to tech for aggro as well as tech for fatigue. It's for these kind of events, so not a lot of room in the sideboard for AB, and we just found a way to make the Kano deck consistently hit that combo by turn 3. We did that through the use of a lot of tomes. So we had 3 Tome of Fyendal, 3 Tome of Aetherwind, and then like I said, the sort of burn spell we had to hit off the top in order to pull off this combo was almost any card in the deck just couldn't be the E-Pot. But obviously that nets you -1 resource. So
someone did hit that though.
Yep, someone did hit that. But yeah, we played.
Don't hit the eye.
Yeah, we played Kano because it was a non-interactive combo deck that was particularly good into the two most represented decks at the Pro Tour, which was Chain and Starvo. After that, you know, if you go to something like the Pro Tour, and especially in the context of like a banning like this, where, you know, we had a banning not too long before we were, I guess you could somewhat say it was an unknown meta. This Kano deck and this combo was good into everything except Prism and like kind of Ice Lexi, right? Like Ice Lexi was not a great matchup and Prism was not. We knew Prism would be there.
Turns out Isaac is actually a great matchup.
Yeah. We knew Prism would be there, but
yeah.
But we felt like it wouldn't be to an overwhelming extent that it would make it not worth to play Kano, and we thought the matchup was still winnable. So that's a great place to be in. We talk about linear game plans and those being really strong in metas like this. While this is a combo deck, it's like the most linear, uninteractive game plan I've ever played in my entire life. Like if a deck doesn't know what this deck is trying to do, it loses.
That's literally it, right? Like if you boil it down, it's like one of the most powerful linear decks in the format, if not the most powerful linear deck in the format. To be honest, it's super powerful. It takes advantage of people being underprepared for it and not packing Arcane Barrier because they cannot fit it in their decks. It takes advantage of people not understanding how the deck works at all, because like you say, it's not just a Kano deck, it's this specific combo deck. There's specific breakpoints, there's things you're trying to set up, and we'll the deck tech we're going to throw, we'll dive into this a bit more, but that's what it's taking advantage of. And then also just being I guess able to just kill really fast. And when you have these decks that are really underprepared, it's so easy to set up. And then also the one card you didn't talk about is Lessons in Lava. That card is very powerful and it enables consistency as well with the plan you're trying to enact, with that combo you're trying to enact as a tutor, as a kill condition on the intern. Like there's so many things that Lessons in Lava does for that deck as well. So
yeah,
a lot of important pieces in that deck, and a lot of good reasons to play it for this event.
Yeah, so there's also part 2 of like why you play Kano, and this is outside of sort of the answer that I gave you, which is the deck being powerful and it being just a fundamentally good choice. But if you look at the options that you had going into this Pro Tour, I feel like none of them were great. You had a lot of good options, right? You can play Starvo, and there's going to be Prism. You can play Chain.
People were not sure what to play, right?
Exactly.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you can play Chain and play a lot of mirrors, or play into Fatigue, which maybe you don't feel comfortable into. Like there was a lot of these decks that I felt like we could have picked up and we could have chosen and had good performances, right? But it felt like it would have been really hard to win the Pro Tour on those decks. Where with Kano, once we had sort of made some changes and just felt like we had discovered the deck, we're like, wow, this gives us a chance to win. And that's why we ended up on the deck. And that's why I think that like colloquially, or like whatever that word is, that's why we call it the deck, right? It's just a fundamentally different way of thinking about Flesh and Blood. Like everybody's going there trying to sort of micro their list to get this little edge in this matchup or that matchup, and just trying to bring in like a sort of good deck to a big field like the Pro Tour. And Kano is just flipping that on its head, right? Where it's like, we're going to play what people think is the worst deck. We're going to play Flesh and Blood in a way that nobody else is playing. No other deck is attacking on this vector, and it's going to dominate. And like that was the whole idea, is like this combo, you can't interact with it. People don't even know where the damage is coming from. They don't know that Aether Wildfire, like how important it is, what the thresholds are, what life they're dead at, what life they're not. And there was a huge surprise factor there. But I think fundamentally, Kano is just not very interactive, right? So even if our opponents did know, there was nothing they could do. So it was, I think it was just a good opportunity to play that hero, and we felt like it gave us a better chance to win the Pro Tour rather than just have a good performance. While at the same time, we had an opportunity to go 0-3, right? Where it doesn't feel like that if you play Chain or Starvo. It feels like if you play Chain or Starvo, you're going to have a good performance almost no matter what. Felt like with Kano, you get a bunch of Prisms, you're going to be in it for a bad time.
The day before, when I told Luke, who was staying with us, I said, I'm pivoting. I'm going to play the Kano deck. And he said, like you've got this dash list, you've got this chain list. Like why, and a lot of reps on those at this point. Why pivot? And I just said to Luke, I'm not here to play the first Pro Tour to top 32. I'm here to win the event. And I think changing to this, even if it's the last minute, gives me the opportunity to do that. And then also I get to play Kano at the first Pro Tour, and that's just something that's super exciting to me. But yeah, I agree. I felt after losing that first round, like I could easily go 0-3 here and be regretting my decision. But I don't think I would have. I think I would have not regretted it because of the way that I did come to the conclusion at the end of it. So we're going to talk more about the deck. Of course, there's going to be a deck tech on the Kano list, but I want to just do a bit of a retrospective on the event overall, Brendan. A few questions, and then we've got some listener questions to finish up as well for episode 58. So, thoughts on the meta we saw? Was it about what you expected? Any surprises to the meta? Any things that you, of course, Kano aside, any things that
Yeah. More Prism than I expected, right? Like, obviously, I still don't think that Prism was a great pick into the Pro Tour, but it did perform well. Where it really surprised me was people like Tyler Horspool having a lot of success with Fatigue Prism into Chain. I think that's where a lot of his wins actually were coming from early in day one. I saw sort of a recap from his Twitter post that he played quite a bit of Chain on day one, and he was at the top tables, so that surprised me. We also said decks like the one you faced, which was what Mike was on, or even the one in the top 8, which were just kind of like similar to the older lists that we've seen. And they were doing well. So I didn't expect that. I expected those lists to have a lot of trouble with Chain. So I would be interested. I don't know what their sort of tournament path looked like, but still, I think we saw Prism convert better to an extent from what I saw, right? Like, so conversion's a funny word because I think on the aggregate, Prism did pretty bad, but Prism did put a few players into like, top 32, top 8. So I think that it did really well. It did better than I expected from that perspective. But on the low tables, like that was heavily saturated by Prism players.
Was it? I mean, you look at just the raw data. Prism had one of the best performances of the weekend.
What's the conversion?
I think it was 15% into 20% on day 2. So pretty good result. I mean, I had said this in the lead up to Pro Tour. I think me and you locked horns multiple times in discussions about testing of Prism not being relevant or not being a good choice. And I disagreed a lot along the whole way. I didn't think it was the choice I would have made for the PT, but I knew it was a choice a lot of people would have made. And I think it was still if you go, this is the way I look at it, right? Is that if you say Prism has a bad matchup into Chain and Briar, but is really good into Star of the Show. Is maybe you've got able to have a good Lexi matchup as well, and then you're good into some of these kind of these other decks, these other Guardians. There's some Oldhim showing up, and then you feel good in your mirror. Well, you're looking at feeling pretty confident to like 70% of the meta. Like how much better off can you be if you pick a different deck? Like if you go with Starvo and you expect Prism to show up, plus you feel the mirror is really like flippy and not very like skill intensive maybe, which I know a lot of people feel like. To a degree, then maybe you're at a similar percentage. So I think like the reason that people bought Prism as like either comfort picks or they feel like they had a plan to fatigue Chain or whatever it was, made a lot of sense to me. And I wasn't surprised at all to see Prism do what it did, and put a few people into top 32 plus someone into top 8. I think maybe I thought it was going to be more like 10 or 12%. 15% was a little bit more than I expected. And it maybe did a little bit better than I expected in terms of like being 1/5 of the field on day 2. But
sort of leads into surprise number 2, which is less Chain than I expected. I expected Chain. Yeah. I expected more Chain. There was Starvo was the most represented deck. I think that Chain could have easily swapped places with there. Like if Chain had been the most represented deck, it wouldn't have particularly surprised me. And then the fact that Starvo didn't particularly surprise me. But the gap between Starvo and Chain, that did surprise me. Like I felt like there was less Chain than I would have expected to show up there.
Yeah, I mean, so Starvo ended up being what, a third of the field basically with Star of the Show, and then Chain was about 25%, right, or just over. So a bit of a drop off there. It was about 60 odd percent between the both of them making up the field. But I think in the days prior, we wouldn't have been surprised if Chain was the number 1 played deck just based on like the conversations and what people were saying. But ultimately, Star of the Show is so powerful just in terms of its what it does, that hero ability. So yeah, like you say, a bit surprising to see less Chain, but not actually that surprising to see as much Star of the Show as we did. And I think I agree with you. Next one, regionality. We talked about performances of regions and who we were looking out for, what we thought, where people were going to do well from. In the end, I think we both said that we felt like a North American player would probably win it just based on pure numbers. In the end, what we have is we have 4 Europeans in the top 8.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a player from Spain, a player from Austria. Forgive me, I can't remember the 2 other European players we're from. Just have to go back and have a look. I think there's a Polish player in there. And then you have 2 North American players. So we have, 2 US-based players, and Alex and our Briar player. And then you have, I guess, an Australian, come New Zealander, Sasha.
Sasha's such an enigma of a country that we could attribute him to, because he also almost exclusively tests with North Americans as well. And lived in Texas. Well, I mean, the side of Hayden there, but like, Sasha, do we give him to New Zealand? Do we give him to Australia? Or do we give him to Texas? I think we're giving him to Texas on this one. Did that little boot
No, you're
camp
not.
down here.
You're giving him, for the narrative here, because I'm about to weave this for you, you're giving him to Australia. All right. So
Because
Sasha's
you want to say
Australian.
that New Zealand didn't get any top 8s.
Want to issue a challenge to the New Zealanders for next PT. They can talk about jet lag and the travel and stuff all they want, but both me and Sasha came from that neck of the woods. So, and Matt Rogers finished in 15th. So it's not undoable. It's not not like it can't be done. And then lastly, you have Canadian player. We have a Canadian player in top 8. I'm trying to rack my mind. Yes, we had Isaac Crew. So that's the breakdown of the top 8 by region. Europe massively showing up. I think they were about a third of the field, I want to say, as well. Like, they were really represented. European players traveled in massive numbers between the Germans, the Polish, the team from Sweden, the group from rest of groups come from, of course, the UK group as well.
Ireland, like
Irish
that's my
players.
favorite thing,
Yeah.
dude, is like when you're just like, you meet the
Irish
whole group from like whatever country in Europe, because there's just such an identity. They all like travel together. So yeah, it was great meeting all those groups. But like, yeah, they totally showed up. Hayden, you had said this like months and months and months ago when we first talked about this topic of like, what are the breakout regions in Flesh and Blood, in like X months or a year. And you were really high on Europe. And of course you were back in episode 57 as well. And I think you were totally right. Like, Europe has really, they've come into the game, and I think that they've sort of planted their flag on the hill, and they're here to stay. Like, it's a dominant force. Won the PT, put 4 players in top 8. I think they're here to stay. Yep,
and the next PT is in Europe as well, and a lot of qualification spots for Europe. So a bit of a challenge to North America, to Oceania, to, I think the one that surprised me, if I would say the opposite side, is to not see a player from Asia. Actually didn't travel in the numbers that maybe I would have thought, just various reasons, long distance, harder to do with current COVID restrictions and travel restrictions in some countries. I know I met the Singaporean group of players, or a few of the Singaporean players on Sunday, but less than I maybe would have thought, in the end, not putting any players into, I think, even top 16. So I think we're going to see that region come back with a vengeance once we get to PT2 and maybe towards Worlds, and maybe if there's a PT this side of the world. So that was the one that maybe surprised me. I want to ask you, this is a big one, right? Performance of, and I'm not trying to like throw any shade at anyone or anything, just I think would be surprised when you look at the names in the top 8 that a lot of the names weren't as recognizable as maybe some of the calling top 8s that we've had in North America. And there's a few things for that, right? These events have been in North America, so North American players are playing. They're the ones that people have got to know more. But in the end, if you look at recognizable names in terms of this top 8, you'd be on the underside of what most people would have taken in terms of having people that were recognizable already in this game in top 8. A lot of first-time top 8ers, even players that had a lot of players qualified through ProQuest, hadn't top 8'd a Nationals or a calling beforehand. I think if you looked at it, Sasha would be the most, I guess, accomplished player in terms of what he's done so far with those 4 calling top 8s.
I think he's the most accomplished player in the game, to be fair.
That's true. But from prior, from the I guess the pre-modern era, as I might call it, and then Isaac, people might be familiar with Isaac as well, potentially. But and Alex, I know Alex is a canon player people have seen, but this is Alex's first top 8, I believe, in a major Flesh and Blood event. So what are your thoughts on just the kind of, actually, if you look down top 32 is pretty stacked, though. If you look at the top 32, but the top 8 in particular, a lot of fresh names in there.
So yeah, it's hard to sort of break that one down, because at the end of the day, I just kind of don't know. I would need another PT as like a sample size, right? But some of it could be. I think that some people would quickly attribute that to the meta, but I don't think that that's totally fair, right? I think that Flesh and Blood has just been a bit, it's been a bit siloed, right? Like we have like a sort of unbalanced amount of coverage and eyes on North American Flesh and Blood, and in very much in New Zealand Flesh and Blood, right? Like New Zealand Flesh and Blood and names that kind of come out of that region. It's just been, they've gotten a lot of coverage, a lot of eyes, a lot of stories, a lot of narratives. So we know a lot of players from those regions. But you look at something like Europe, like they haven't gotten a lot of events to sort of let them come onto the scene. We've had some nationals over there. Obviously, like Matt Fox came out of the UK nationals. We had Gregors in Poland, Christian in Germany, et cetera, et cetera. But the sort of their storylines really haven't been weaved yet in the game. So I think that that's why some of these names kind of come as a surprise. But like I think it just speaks to sort of the skill level and the skill play and what is sort of lurking below, right? Like we put a lot of weight on people that we expect to perform, but at the end of the day, I think that we've talked about this a lot, and so the average player's skill level going up, but I think even like at the top, right, at the peak, that skill level has really started to sort of creep up, and we have a lot of fantastic players now sitting at sort of this high level of flesh and blood skill.
Yep. I mean, actually, that's what I think it is the fact that we just haven't had enough events. We haven't had the focus on these players. These players have just got into the game. It's such a newer thing for a lot of these regions of Europe, and also this is the first time for them to be able to play and travel outside of maybe Krakow of a big event, and then we see what happens here. So it's really interesting to see in terms of where these players landed. I mean, outside of, like I say, outside of the top 8, you know, there is some names you might be more familiar with, the Michael Hamiltons, the Matt Rogers of the world in there as well. I know Justin Wong from New Zealand made top 32, I think. So yeah, Nick Butcher's in there as well. So these players are in and around there, and those are the things you're going to start to look for, right? Like how consistently can players like the names that you're more familiar with put up. It's not just top 8s, right? That's really hard to top 8 multiple Pro Tours, right? You look at other games, that's in history, how many people have had more than 4 or 5 top 8s in a Pro Tour over a 10, 15-year career is very, very, very minimal, right? There's a lot of things that have to go your way, plus being, you know, some of the best players in the world. But these players that consistently put up top 16s, top 32s, these are the players that you're going to start to see as name stays, and then they're going to get their top 8s every now and again. Those are the ones that I'm going to be definitely looking out for. So, you know, come next PT, I'm going to be looking out for your Isaac Krutz, your Alexander Vors, your William Kubiks. Like, see how these guys have just top 8'd run into the next event. You know, we've seen them in top 16s and top 32s as well. I think that's going to be a mark of just how good these players are if they can consistently do that, because these PTs are only going to get harder. Only going to get harder to day 2. Only going to get harder to qualify. Harder to day 2. Harder to top 32, 16, top 8, etc. So,
yeah.
Let's talk about players. Talk about regionality. What do you think? Like, it's really interesting now. I'm not sure how much coverage you've gone back and looked at, but like, what do you think the narrative of this weekend is? Like, is it? To me, I think it might be Europe. Like Europe's breakout weekend. I think that, along with Kano, you know, showing up and surprising people, and just how open things can be when people put the time and effort into it, is a big narrative there. Ultimately, I don't think Star of the Show was the narrative of this weekend. Right? We might have thought it could have been, even after the bannings. But the other one for me may be the fact that just like the Flesh and Blood global community is amazing. Like, just what a weekend, what an atmosphere at the venue, and even outside the venue with everything happening around with coverage and things like that. Just you know, an amazing time and amazing to be a part of Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, like I mean, this, don't take this in a negative way. I think this is just in sort of like a retrospective, and I think it's also, I'm saying because it's kind of funny, but I think one of the narratives of this weekend is hubris, right? Like when people think the meta is the most solved it's ever been, when there's like some of the most dominant heroes we've ever seen, right? Like we have Starvo and Chain, just like these premier decks, and people have really locked into these ideas that these are the decks, right? We have Prism as a target for Starvo, we have Ice Lex as a target for Chain, and like,
yep.
They just saw, I think a lot of people looked at the rest of the available heroes as like almost unplayable, right? And right when that got to its most extreme point, it's like, boom, Kano comes out. Finally, right? The worst deck, or the worst hero in Flesh and Blood, like the most almost agreed upon unplayable, comes out and performs. And I think that should just be like a wake-up call, right? And it's just like, check yourself, check those things that you've been sort of your team believes or that you believe, because like we were the same way, right? Like we thought the exact same things right until we tried to sort of go for Kano or try to reinvent the wheel. And this process for us is also like, we go through the same process as everybody else. We play like that trash Prism brew, or like we try to break the wheel with Rhino or Mech or whatever, and it's like 9 times out of 10 doesn't work, but the 1 time out of 10 it does, like you get to bring a deck that's a surprise and just can kind of blow a lot of people out of the water on the weekend. So like, I think it's really, really cool for Flesh and Blood history that happened on the PT, right? Because that could have happened at so many callings and so many pro quests and so many events throughout the history of this game. But for PT1 to really just, I don't know, display that, I love it. And I guess this is kind of like we're kind of talking about our deck at this point, which I don't want to do, but that's why I was so proud to pick it up and play it, because it's just freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, want to dive in lastly to some questions from this Twitter community, from the Discord community, from just, definitely put a call out to say, what should we make sure we cover in this? And we've had some questions. So there's definitely a few questions around this, and I'm not going to call out specific people that asked questions because it was just kind of some themes that came out, Brendan. But what's some things that maybe could have improved the event, and we'd like to see differently heading into France?
Some really low hanging fruit here, which is the calling. So the calling capped out, and it capped out, and like that's not ideal. Like the calling shouldn't cap out. They should really be able to sort of at least service the people that are going to be there on that weekend. But the reason why it's an issue is because like the calling capped out, but there was tons of round one no shows and drops, right? So there was just no flexibility on that end, and like I think a lot of players missed out when
They did.
from a logistical issue, right? Because it was, and not from the issue of there actually not being enough spots, but from them not being able to logistically handle getting players into the tournament when there was actually still physical spots left, which there were. So that's unfortunate. I know some people did get really burned by that. I'm happy that they did institute the thing where if you were in the Pro Tour, you kind of had a guaranteed spot. The calling, that was really nice. I think if I had lost on day one and then I paid before, but say I didn't and I was locked out of playing the calling, that would feel kind of weird. So that was a good thing. But people traveling all the way to the Pro Tour to play the calling because they didn't have an invite, and then maybe they didn't book their ticket or whatever it is, and not being able to play when there was spots available, not ideal.
Yeah, like in terms of, poor preparation on some people's parts, in terms of maybe not getting their tickets sorted, right? That's one thing. But when there is actually literally physical space at these tables because people don't show up for round one, and then you can't have these people play. Like I had a pretty easy solution, I thought, which was don't start side events until lunchtime on the day one of the calling. Allow an extra 10 to 15% capacity. You're going to get drops. They know they're going to get drops. They know they're going to get people who aren't showing up. They're going to get people who just want the side event packages. And then also after round 3, and people mathematically can't make it anymore, you're going to get more drops. So you create more space that way. But you allow, the start of the day to be more focused on the calling, and then open up side events from there. Maybe use some of that space, or as soon as you have the extra space because of the no-shows, even in round 2, you can have more space. So I think that would have been a pretty easy solution to look at. And I hope that's something that they make sure they have the venue space. They understand the capacity, and at the end of the day, I don't know if it's whether it's a Channel Fireball thing or it's a Legend Story Studios thing, but I think, like you say, pretty easy improvement there. I think the other one for me is like just to be honest, where these venues are. I think this venue was like quite difficult to. It's not that difficult to get to, right? Like it's pretty close to an airport. There's accommodation around, but I really hope that we see, I guess, some venues that like Krakow, right? So the Krakow calling, that venue looked phenomenal. And I talked to, who was I talking to? Oh, Yuanji. Yuanji was saying like, obviously went and won the calling. But like the venue that was over there was just like phenomenal. Like, it felt really nice to be in. It was really warm and welcoming. And then, you're in this venue that were in the weekend, and it was quite, at times when it was a little bit emptier and the atmosphere was a little bit lower, it felt quite cold. If you know what I mean, like in terms of that, it was harder to build that atmosphere. I think we're so lucky that we had just this phenomenal buzz about PT number 1 and what was happening that kind of put that to the side, to be honest, and overshadowed it because it just created such an atmosphere in there. But I'm a little bit worried for future events. If we continue to be in some of these types of venues, maybe we can find some that are a little bit, have a bit more character to them. It's tough.
It is interesting that the Pro Tour had the worst venue out of any major professional event in the United States.
Because Orlando was great. I remember being in Orlando when I traveled there. It was US Nationals and the calling. I thought that venue was like.
I mean, I've been to every calling, and this was by far the worst one. It wasn't like it wasn't like, oh, I don't want to be here bad, but like you said, it was just there was not a lot of personality to it.
Facilities weren't great.
Yeah, a bit far out of the way. Yeah, I mean, like the bathroom lines were pretty brutal. So, yeah, I mean, they definitely could have done better on that one. But I don't know. I don't know what it's like to book a venue in the New York, New Jersey area, or like what kind of contract CFB has, because I think that's where.
That's what it is.
Oh, that's always what it is. It's always these like long, because these venue contracts, from what I understand, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, they're like long contracts, right? I think they're like in the around like 5 to 10 years or something like that. So they're kind of locked in at these certain venues.
Yep. So just on the flip side of that, I know Tyler had dropped a question, Tyler Horspool, about what we're impressed by and disappointed in. I think that both kind of reflect maybe something we were disappointed in was especially around the calling. What about impressed with? Anything you're impressed with? I mean, from my side, I was just really impressed actually with, I think the level of judging had really taken a step up from, I know even when I was in Orlando. I'm not sure if that's like the presence of having like Josh Scott there and the work he's done. I know there was like a judge conference, I think on the Thursday before the players banquet even, to work with judges and things like that. That was a big positive for me, as I think just the way that judge calls and stuff were handled was, yeah, I think we're starting to move some of that more professionalism, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I think it was the best coverage that we've had so far.
Yep.
Especially the way that they sort of transitioned from match to match, from like the initial match to the secondary match, and kind of had a lot of commentary and a lot of gameplay going on throughout the stream. I thought it was really well done. And obviously they had sort of a stellar lineup with the commentators that we were able to get. So I thought they sort of crushed it there. And it was
In between as well. In between
yeah,
the rounds, like
no, for
interviews
sure.
with
The
players,
interviews, like Tannen's
was on
walking
the
around.
floor.
Yeah, walking around the camera, all that. So I think they did really well. And then sort of the last one for me is just like the presence of the people from this like Legend Story, right? Like James, Chris Gehring, all those people out on the floor, just kind of talking with people, talking about the game, and just the cool things that they were doing as well. I know James was giving out some cards. You know, they gave out the silver palms at the UPF event. It was just, I don't know. I think it was a great weekend for people that weren't just interested in the coverage and in the Pro Tour.
Which James called a shot about. He said, you know, you've got to be at this first Pro Tour, whether you're a Pro Tour competitor or not. And he definitely lived up to that with some of these side events. The Commoner event gave away a law book. Like, there's all sorts of things happening. So many great side events. We got some questions about Kano specifically. So some people had asked, is it worth to play more Arcane Barrier going forward or just to eat the Kano matchup? That's an interesting one, right, Brendan? Because I think if you want to play more Arcane Barrier, you have to have a plan to how to use that. It's more than just packing Arcane Barrier into deck, Null into your deck. You might get an extra little bump that helps you in the matchup, but what you really need in order to tackle Kano, if it's going to be prevalent in this meta, which I'm not even sure that necessarily is going to be, it was like a case, and it's also not the easiest to play, but is actually a plan of how you're going to use that Null Rune. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. So if you just like pack a bunch of Null Rune in like your Briar deck, you're probably going to get dunked on either way. Like, you just don't have the resources, right? Like, Kano spells you on his turn, then you go to your turn. Are you just going to forego playing any cards? So like, just, I think if you're playing Guardian, like Null Rune 2 with Heart of Ice, or maybe just Heart of Ice in general, like those things are annoying. Like, those things are not fun to play against, or at least they're harder for us. But specifically like Rune Blades, playing more Arcane Barrier doesn't really help them too much. I think the Spell Void stuff is actually, that's what sucks. Because it depends what kind of Kano deck you're playing too, right? Like this Kano deck, it's a combo deck. So you really only need to block on one turn. Obviously, the less you block, the lower your threshold gets. So the faster you can be comboed. But blocking on the combo turn is the most important thing.
Yep, which is where Spell Void obviously helps in with those resource constraints. So yes, it's understanding your plan, right? Like that's where Spell Void versus Arcane Barrier comes into play as well. Nick asked, what's the core 60 of the Kano deck you play in the every matchup? It's basically the same. We'll talk about that in the deck tech. There's very few cards. I mean, I don't know about you. I touched, I think, 6 or 7 cards on my sideboard all weekend.
It's like a Scour, right? The Scour comes in and we sub out.
Emeritus.
Yeah, the Scour and the red Emeritus. So like the Scour and the Emeritus both come in for Prism, and then the Scour by itself comes in for Chain. Other than that, it's a straight 60. Like, we definitely could have registered the baubles.
Yeah, which I know Sasha wanted to do. I hedged it a little bit. I played like a D-Pot, a Deja Vu Potion in 1 or 2 matchups. I played a Chain Lightning a couple of times. But yeah, to be honest, I could have not played those as well. So we'll talk more about that in the deck tech. Other questions about Kano. What do we think the reaction will be to Kano? Load more Arcane Barrier or Race before the setup? I think it depends, right? Like you just talked about before, it's about having a plan for the Arcane Barrier. It's about Spell Void versus Null Rune. And I think it's going to depend on what people want to do, and also how people take the Kano deck after this. Are people going to play exactly what we did, or are they going to play, you know, a deck that's more aligned with like what Alex was trying to do, and he was trying to take advantage of Arcane Barrier through like double spelling and things like that. So I think it's going to depend on how people actually look to play Kano as to what the reaction is going to be. I'm not convinced that Kano is going to have a great showing in this ProQuest season, to be honest, but we'll see.
So. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that the Kano deck is like a breakout deck that just beats everything no matter what they do, right? Like, I think if people come prepared, they prepare sideboard slots. Like, there's a lot of really crappy cards in this game for that deck. Like, there's the Guardian one. I don't even know what it's called, but I think it's like one of the biggest mistakes.
Steadfast.
Steadfast. Like, F that card. Like, that would suck. So if people are packing Steadfast into their sideboard and stuff, like, ugh, or or the Prayer, like,
Aaron's Prayer on the combo turn's pretty bad.
it's like, come on. But it'll always be there, right? Like, Kano is that monster under your bed. It's just waiting for you to get greedy and think that you don't need to think about it anymore, and it's gonna come back.
Definitely. Other questions? So that's kind of the Kano questions. What was the highest high and the lowest low for you, Brendan, this weekend?
Yeah, I think the highest high was Sasha top 8ing. Like, I was really happy to see that. Just like the overall performances, like, I think that we sort of had this idea, and it looked like it was doing really well for us, but we could have walked up to that turn and been wrong. Like, it was very possible, and I think that the fact that we weren't and we saw good performances, like, I was really proud of that. The lowest low, yeah, just like my team draft performance wasn't ideal, but you got to learn from those and pick yourself back up, and I'll be seeing some people in France, that's for sure.
Yeah, you'll be looking for money matches. Don't tell anyone I said that. For me, I think I like it's similar. Highest high was just hearing Sasha's name called out and succeed, and top 8 was just so awesome. My lowest low, I didn't really have many lows to be honest. I had a phenomenal weekend. I had the best time. I never felt really down. I would say if anything, it's probably punting my final round of day one. The line was there. I saw the line basically as soon as I played the other line, and that annoyed me. But I mean, if that's the worst of it, honestly, like, what a weekend, right?
No, it was honestly one of the best weekends of my life, and I'm pretty sure Hayden echoes that statement, because I know he's looking to spend more time with us over these next few years, maybe.
I'd love to.
Sparked a little fire in his belly, I think.
A few last questions as well to wrap up, Brennan. Less on, I guess, the deck or the actual event, but just on the experience of the weekend. So, favorite food, or favorite restaurant, favorite food in America. I mean, I guess this is maybe for more than me, since I don't live there, but maybe we can hear yours. Someone asked like best meal in America. Look, to be honest, I only had one meal out just because of time. My trip ended up getting changed and cut short, unfortunately. So I only had the one like really nice meal out, which I went for with Sasha and Luke down at the pier, which was it was really nice. Enjoyed a nice glass of wine with that as well. And other than that, I mean, the tacos, the Los Tacos were great, and I had a couple of trips to Chipotle.
Yeah, so I actually got to go out on Tuesday and Wednesday night.
Oh, you did too. Forgot about that.
With some friends that I sort of had in New York. So I was able to go to Jean Georges, which on Tuesday, which is like a French restaurant near Central Park, which was really good, but I think probably overrated overall. And then I went to this place called Sushi Katsui, which was where is it, like West Village, Hayden, and that was amazing. And it was pretty unassuming. Like, it wasn't like particularly fancy or anything like that, but they had this sort of omakase, which is like the chef's choice sort of set menu. And like, I have celiac disease, so they're able to do gluten-free as well, which is always really a struggle with like sushi and Japanese food. It's fine when you order off the menu, but if you do like a chef's choice, it's like, it can be pretty tough because they won't have the substitute stuff. So yeah, I just had this like amazing meal, and then we had some nice sake, and yeah, I can't recommend that place enough, which is like, so yeah, it's Sushi Katsui in like downtown New York. That was my favorite meal by far.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm sad we didn't. We talked about going back there.
It was closed. Yeah, it was closed on Sunday.
Yeah, didn't get into it, but that's all right. There's lots of things in New York closed on like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Weirdly, I was trying to go to the Natural History Museum, closed on Monday and Tuesday. I mean, that's just crazy to me, but that's fine. Other questions. If you both had to cosplay in Lil, what would you cosplay as?
Literally,
we saw some amazing cosplay this weekend.
Yeah.
Some amazing cosplay, both from the professional cosplayers that were there, but also from the cosplay contest. I know, I think Carolina is her name, won with the Exude Confidence cosplay, which I know they put a ton of time and effort into. It looked phenomenal. So but just so many good. I think in the cosplay competition, I think there was like something like 20 people or something in there.
That's crazy.
There were so many. Yeah, so fantastic to see. But yeah, Brendan, what would you?
What would I cosplay?
Yeah.
Well, I will dress up and put on anything for that Taylor card. So you tell me. I will wear anything, and I will cosplay anything. Just if there's a Taylor promo at the end of that tunnel, doesn't matter.
Well, I'll probably cosplay as Flake I'm gonna be Watch Flake. That's my cosplay. For
You know what? I could do. Because we played wizard. I could do like an old man, like old wizard cosplay. Which it's weird because it's actually coincidentally that's a Tan and Grace cosplay. I could just be like an old wise wizard, far past my days, like a Bilbo Baggins. Just like thousands of years old. Maybe that one.
love it. Love it. Peter asks, how many shoes did I bring to traveling? Peter saw me with 3 different pairs of shoes during the weekend. Look, yeah, my suitcase was dedicated to outfits. That's for sure. I had to scramble to grab some cards on the Friday that I didn't have with me because I had to sacrifice the space for an extra jacket. So I don't.
Yeah,
I had 3 pairs
Hayden
of
actually
shoes
had
to
to
me.
borrow all of his decks and cards from me. He just only packed clothes, but
Didn't have space.
he looked good while doing it. So
Oh, I got the biggest compliment from James White over the weekend. I'm gonna keep it. I told a few people about it, but I'll keep it to myself. But James White said a very nice thing to me, which I was very happy about when we caught up. So, yeah. Last question, I think, Brendan. Here, I'm just scrolling through. How do you deal with jet lag when traveling so far for PT1? I actually guess this question is again for me. Found myself crashing right after each day of the event and being wide awake at 3 to 4 a.m. in the morning. That sounds awful, Kai. Not something that you want to have. I get very lucky and I don't get jet lag. But the one thing that does help me as well, I think the one thing I do to help myself is like as soon as I leave whatever where I'm coming from Australia is like just get on the time zone and just like power through it. Like I don't sleep on the plane unless it's at a time I would normally sleep. I think that's like a death sentence if you start to like fall into like these weird patterns of sleep. Because when you show up there, then you're already on sort of weird sleep patterns. So and then when I got to New York, it was like in the afternoon and it was like, okay, well I just can't sleep until it's bedtime tonight and then just try and get a normal sleep pattern from there. It's tough. It's not easy, but you just kind of got to trick your body a little bit, I think.
yeah. So what was the name of the person that asked this question?
This is Kai.
All right, Kai. Let me tell you
Kai
something.
Yang.
Like, yes, Hayden does beat jet lag, but he's also the worst person to take advice from because he's a freaking psychopath. I've never seen anybody function on less sleep and just like change time zones like this guy. I don't know what he does. I think it's actually genetic, but he actually is not affected by jet lag. It's ridiculous. And also can barely sleep and just function at a very high level. So I know Tarek Patel actually put up a nice article about how to beat jet lag for a card gamer. And I would look into that. But Hayden is, I don't even know how he does it. He's built different, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've also dodged COVID as well, so
He's just like, yeah, I'll pop down for the weekend and play a tournament. I'm like, Jesus Christ, sounds terrible. You're gonna be so jet lagged. He's like, no, I don't get jet lag. I didn't believe him. Honestly, I didn't believe him until I saw it in Orlando, and then I mean, this one was New Jersey in particular. I don't even understand how you maintain the schedule that you did this weekend.
I may not have slept on one particular evening, almost, but that's okay. Awesome. I think that's going to wrap it up. This is like some of these questions we asked. I kind of amalgamated some questions from across different parts of the community into what we talked about. But yeah, thank you again to everyone for the questions. Thank you to everyone that came up to us. I just want to say, Brennan, to everyone that came up and had a chat to us. We took pictures with people this weekend. People were so nice. I don't know why people want a picture of me. But we did that and signed some stuff, and people were just amazing. Like I had such great conversations, had an awesome time interacting with people and meeting so many people I hadn't, and meeting people again that I'd met previously in places like Orlando or through our Discord, through Twitter, whatever it is. Honestly, like probably the highlight of my weekend was just the people.
Yeah, it was a wild experience. I obviously echo that entire statement, but I just can't put it into words. Like it's surreal, right? Like it's surreal for us to sit behind a computer screen and a microphone and to have conversations with that many people and hear about things like impact and just appreciation and like I'm at a loss for words, but thank you all. Thank you to everyone that came up. It means a lot more than you would expect.
Yep. Yeah. I know people were saying like, oh, don't mean to take up your time and things like that. People are so nice and courteous, but also it's also really nice for us as well. So, we get to meet people and make sure just hearing that like what we do with the podcast and with our videos and things like that, people actually enjoy them and it means something to them and they get to actually learn from us is like the coolest thing because, as much as we just do this for ourselves as well, it's really cool to know that other people get something out of it. So thank you. Brendan, do we have a Google review this week before we sign off? Or are we taking a break this week from the Google reviews?
All right, Hayden. So no Google review this week, but that's only because we're going to hype up next week's, which is going to be very special. So next week, Whoever writes the funniest review between now and next week's podcast will not only be featured on the Arsenal Pass podcast during this section, but will also win a full playset of extended art heralds as well as an Eclipse playmat. So you get the full thing. And if you want to win, Hayden, tell them where to get it. By the way, I want to remind you, funny is the most important factor in which we critique these. But 5 stars does help as well.
5 stars.
Does help as well. But Hayden, how do you submit a review to Arsenal Pass?
Yeah, well, you go to ratethispodcast.com/Arsenal Pass and leave us your review. And honest is good, funny's good. 5 stars is even better. But if you don't really want to go with 5 stars, you don't have to. But should you? Anyway, Brendan, as Brendan says, you can win a nice juicy Eclipse mat and some a playset of full art Herald of Rebirth. Other than that, Brendan, that's going to do it for episode 58. A bit of a longer one today as we recap the PT, talk about Kano, talk about a bit of a retrospective, answer some questions, and we'll be back next week. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about, but probably something to do with Uprising and Blitz as we head towards the calling or the ProQuest season. Maybe so much going on right now in the world of Flesh and Blood, so many things to talk about. I do just want to say before we go, if you aren't subscribed to the Arsenal Pass YouTube channel, make sure you do so. We're going to be back with some videos through this ProQuest season and into Uprising, talking Limited, talking Constructed, talking Blitz, all the things relevant, all the decks you're looking for. Look out for that Kano deck tech and sort of the Patreon piece of that as well with all the math and everything. The full sideboard guide will be there as well. Twitter. Me and Brendan are both on Twitter. Check us out. Brendan APG for Brendan and at Fian_Dale for me, like the tunic, like my last name. Talking all things Fab related. We post, we've been posting things from the weekend, retweeting Channel Fireball's memes, which have been phenomenal over the weekend. If you haven't checked out Channel Fireball's memes from the weekend, so good. Apparently, people are Team Brendan or Team Hayden. Brendan, I didn't know about this.
Did I tell? I told you that I got that framed. By the way, the Blazing Ether parental advisory music cover. It's framed. Sasha has one now too, but it's up on my office wall. I'll get you one. You like that life pad I got you, right?
So good. I've got to post a video of this. Brendan got me one of the best gifts I've ever had. He got me an Arsenal Pass life pad, which I used all weekend. I'm going to post a little video of it. It's honestly one of my most thoughtful gifts, and I didn't think Brendan was capable of it, so thank you, Brendan.
Jeez. That's an interesting way of saying thank you.
It's amazing. It's my favorite thing that you've ever given me, so thank you very much.
It's even better than the smooch goodbye in Orlando, I guess.
Exactly. Well, we're better for others. Lastly, Patreon. Big thank you to all of our patrons. Met a lot of you over the weekend. And I was going to say Orlando in New Jersey. Thank you again for your support. If you do want to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Arsenal Pass and check out the things we're doing for, extra podcasts, monthly videos. We're going to be doing, of course, the Kano deck tech on YouTube, but the guide and some extra sideboarding stuff and the math will go up on the Patreon. Plus, we're probably going to do a gameplay review, I think, as well from PT and probably a Kano game. Just go in depth about some of the lines and stuff that go on there. So check out Patreon. Otherwise, Brendan, we'll see you next week.
See you, everybody.